Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Dennis Dunaway, bassist for the original Alice Cooper Group. He's here to talk about the recently released new album from the Alice Cooper Group, their first in 52 years, called The Revenge of Alice Cooper. He's got the stories behind the Alice Cooper classics, I'm 18, School's Out, Billion Dollar Babies, and more. He also had a memoir out in 2015. We'll talk about that book and what the future holds for the Alice Cooper Group. It's all coming up next on Booked on Rock. Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. We are back with another chapter in the dialogue series, a chill and chat with authors, fellow podcasters, musicians, and more. And boy, do we have a great guest today. Our guest is Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Dennis Dunaway, bassist for the legendary Alice Cooper Group, who just recently released their first studio album together in over 50 years. I believe it's 52 years exactly. The Revenge of Alice Cooper. Also, his memoir titled Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs just recently reached its 10th anniversary. Dennis, thank you so much for being on the show. This is great.
Oh, sure, Eric. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I was just saying before we started recording, a long time ago, it's probably early 2000s. I interviewed you and Neil Smith. It was a gig you were playing with the Bouchard brothers in Danbury, Connecticut.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
The gigs. Well, first it was Bouchard, Dunaway, and Smith.
That's what it was.
That was Joe Bouchard.
Okay.
And then it changed to be Blue Coupe, which was Albert Bouchard on drums.
Yep. I saw that's a recent project. Is that project still going?
Oh, yeah. We've been going for 10 years or so now, but everybody's got other irons in the fire at the moment. But we released a DVD with a bunch of music videos, and also we added an extra disc of what we thought would be outtakes and unreleased demos, but it turned out to be another album. So that's called When Legends Collide, and you can go to bluecoupe.com and find that.
Cool. I think you can also access it through your website, which we'll get to that in a little bit too. Well, let's start with the album, which is fantastic. It is classic Alice Cooper sound, produced by Bob Ezrin. It feels like you're in the room.
You know, that is what it sounds like, because that's what it was. We were in the room recording all together, Alice standing next to me and Neil to the other side and Michael right in front of me. And that's how we used to record. So that's how we wanted to do this. But normally the bass would have maybe a couple of takes where I nailed it on the bed track. You're really just going for the drums and you can add everything else. But this album is almost entirely drums and bass as they went down in the studio. And then some of the Michael redid a lot of his guitar parts because he had his own amplifier at home that he can dial in exactly what he wanted. And Alice rewrote some of the lyrics and stuff, and him and Bob Ezrin added things. And then this young guitar player, Jazzy from Nashville, who's an amazing artist in his own right, very glam, very early 70s. Well, he added a lot of guitar parts throughout the album.
Yeah, that's cool. And you had to keep this a secret for quite a while. I think from one of the interviews I saw, this is back in 2021 when you guys got together and started working on this, and you had to keep it under wraps for a while. You had recorded with Alice on various tracks throughout the recent years, but this time a full album with the band. How did that all come together?
There were a lot of steps. Being inducted into the Rock Hall and playing Alice's Christmas pudding shows to benefit for the teen centers that him and his wife are involved in out in Phoenix, Arizona. We did that in 2010, 2019, and we just did one a couple weeks ago. So those would bring us together in the rehearsal room and on stage. But I think the final thing was that Neil and Michael had been getting together out in Phoenix, Arizona. And then when Alice was in town, he joined them, and they came up with some songs that they were excited about. So then we decided, well, it's about time. Let's do it.
Yeah, just And it just happened from there. So it's Alice, yourself, drummer Neil Smith, guitarist Michael Bruce on guitar. But what's so cool is that on this album, there are tracks featuring recordings by the late, great Alice Cooper group guitarist Glenn Buxton, who sadly passed in 1997. But there are 3 tracks on this album, including the lead single, Black Mamba, and What Happened to You, which those date back to the early 70s.
Actually, Black Mamba was a newer tune that we kind
Okay.
of made happen in the studio for this album. But What Happened to You is a song that uses a guitar recording that I've had of Glenn Buxton for all these years since 1973. And so I told Bob Ezrin, I said, this can be cleaned up with today's technology, right? And he said, sure, send it. So in the studio, we laid down a track that we thought Glenn would like that went with the guitar riff, and we used his actual recording on the song. And like you say, there are other songs. There's a song called See You on the Other Side, which was written by Neil, started writing it right after he heard that Glenn had passed in 97. And then he played what he had for me, and then him and I finished it. And then there's a song called What a Sid, which is kind of a jazzy thing that I wrote as a follow-up to Blue Coupe to Blue Turk, which was on the Schools Out album, a jazzy kind of pseudo-jazzy thing. And Alice rewrote my lyrics to be about Glenn Buxton. So we have those, and then also we have other songs that there's a lot of Glenn throughout this album in various ways.
Blood on the Sun, I think, right? That's the lyrics are about his love of TV Guide.
Well, yeah. Glenn collected every TV Guide,
I
which
love
was
this.
a little weekly booklet you got in the old days to tell you what was going to be on television that week. And Glenn always had them all stacked in chronological order on his bedroom floor, and you had to be careful not to knock them over or you'd hear from him. But so I had one of his TV guides, and I had heard that you can't copyright a title. So basically, I went through one of his TV guides and picked out what a bunch of titles that I thought were really interesting. And then I went back through and put them in an order that I thought they flowed together, kind of like inspired a bit by Whiter Shade of Pale, the Procol Harum song, where you kind of, when you listen to the lyrics, you kind of make up your own meaning.
Yep.
So that's what Blood on the Sun is, a bunch of movie titles strung together.
It's an epic track. And you got sole songwriting credit on that. So you wrote the music as well.
Yeah, I play guitar on that one too.
That's a great track. Black Mamba, going back to that one came quickly, right? That was just, you guys are jamming.
Yeah, that was like a guitar jam that Michael had. And him and Neil had jammed on it at some point out in Phoenix. And then when we were in the studio, Neil said, hey, Michael, what was that riff that you had? And Michael started playing it, and we wrote a song.
Kill the Flies is another one of my favorites. And Alice sounds great on that.
That seems to be, going by YouTube views, that seems to be a very popular track.
Okay, not surprised.
That one, Bob Ezrin was talking about, Dennis, what do you think should happen on the bass on this? And I told him that I think that the body of the song should be just below the belt, just lock in and don't do anything fancy. And then I said, but I think the middle part should go somewhere very ethereal. So Bob sent me a keyboard part that he had come up with, and then I added bass to that. And then we not only inserted that into the middle of the song, but we also used about half of that for the intro of the song. But that's pure Alice, all the lyrics and the vocals.
It's a great one. The track Wild Ones goes back to the 80s, and a jam with you, Alice, and guitarist Kane Roberts, who was Alice's guitarist back at that time at your place in Connecticut.
It was actually at Neil's house in Connecticut. And Alice asked Neil and I if we wanted to help them lay down some demos for the Constrictor album. And I think we did about 4 or 5 songs up at Neil's house in a couple of afternoons. And Wild Ones was one of the ones that I had written. So we made a demo of that with Kane Roberts. But we did some others. The World Needs Guts. I can't remember all of them, but we had a blast, even though I was running a temperature where I should have been in bed at the time.
Oh, really?
But you know, music calls.
Yeah. And the album cover is so cool. It's the old school monster movie thing going on there, and they got you in character.
So Neil came up with some, we were trying to think of what we should title this album. And Neil came up with The Revenge of, and he had various versions of that. And then Alice said, oh yeah, I know the perfect guy to do the cover. And it's this guy, Graham Humphreys from Britain. And if you look at his website, you'll see that our album cover fits right in with all of the horror film posters that he's done. I think he did like, not Nightmare on Elm Street, but something like that. And then a lot of others.
Oh, it's great. The Return album, The World Was Afraid of.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, the recording came together quickly. You talked about that. The chemistry that you guys had is still there. I believe you said Bob Ezrin set aside time to record the album, and you were way ahead of the deadline. Like songs just flowed out of you.
Well, right. Bob, when this whole thing happened in spurts with long periods where nothing happened. So, you know, we got together in the studio, just Neil, Michael, Alice, and I out in Arizona. And then we came up with about 4 songs, and then nothing happened for a long time because of everybody's schedules. You know, Alice is touring, Bob's got other projects, and Neil and I. So then it almost seemed like it wasn't going to happen again, you know, because this wasn't the first rodeo of us attempting to put an album together over the years. But then all of a sudden something big would happen again, and we'd get all excited again. Then there'd be another long period of where we thought, oh, it's not going to happen. But Bob finally got us booked studio time. And at that point, we had about 70 songs bouncing around between us. And we still hadn't decided which songs we were going to do, definitely. So I thought we were going to just go in the studio and do pre-production and decide what songs. But we started laying down tracks, and Bob had booked 10 days figuring we would get about 5 tracks. And no, we were rolling along like we did in the old days, and ended up walking out of there with a dozen songs.
Amazing. It's like no time went by. And you said in one interview, there's enough songs for 5 albums. So
Yeah.
you know where I'm going. Will we get another one from the Alice
I don't
Cooper?
know. All it takes, the same thing. It's always been the same. All it takes is a phone call, and we're all in, you know.
Well, that's just cool. You guys have been close all along. I mean, the band broke up, but it wasn't one of those things where there was a lot of trash talking in the media or anything like that. I mean, you guys remained pretty cool, right?
You know, a band is family. You know, we were in the same car, in the same hotel room, and the same stage and everything for many years. So, you know, families all have certain things, you know, that nobody's perfect, but you make it work. And we've all been friends. I mean, Alice and I became friends when he was 15 or 16 and I was 17. So you know, we didn't get lawyers when things started going awry, thinking that we started as friends, just a bunch of high school buddies that had a dream, and we achieved that dream. We made it to the top of the glittery rock pile, and we didn't want to lose our friendship over it. And also at the time we thought if we get lawyers involved, that'll be the nail in the coffin for anything ever happening again. We didn't know it would take 52 years, but,
Yeah.
but that was the thinking at the
Yeah.
time.
There's a story that you had told in one interview, which I love about Glenn, when you went over to his house and you were hanging out in his bedroom and playing some records, playing some Stones records. I mean, you guys go back that far.
That's how I learned to play bass. When I bought my bass, uh, Glenn went with me. We went to Montgomery Ward's and bought a beginner's bass. And then I went over to Glenn's house and I didn't even know how to tune it. I barely had an idea of what bass was because my record player at the time, you couldn't hear bass hardly at all. The only time I would notice bass was if I heard a jukebox somewhere. But Glenn, the very first thing he did, he sat me down and he had his guitar and we sat down by the record player and he said, okay, before we start, always remember one thing. The most important thing is the feel. And then he taught me how to tune. And then we learned through mostly Rolling Stones, early Rolling Stones, and Chuck Berry records and blues patterns. And that's the other link to Glenn on this album. We have some songs that we wrote that are very Glenn Buxton from that era, the kind of stuff that he liked, including What Happened to You. But yeah, but first of all, I had to get Glenn out of bed because it was a weekend. And Glenn has always been the hardest person in the world to wake up. And so I went to his house and I didn't really know him that well yet. He was a tough guy.
Your bicycle. You got on your bicycle and
I rode my bicycle and carried my bass. Yeah. And then I went in and his mom said, oh, he's down the hall there, the first door on the left, go wake him up. And I went in Glenn's bedroom and all I saw, he had tin foil. This is Phoenix, Arizona. So to block out the sun, he had tin foil over all of the window panes. And then he's totally covered up, except one foot sticking out and TV guides all over the floor.
Of course.
And his guitar case. But I had to wake him up, and all I could get out of him was go away. But I was persistent, and that wasn't the last time I had to wake him up.
Oh man! Now Alice, did he at the time Vincent Furnier or Fernier? What's the pronunciation?
Well, his family pronounces it Furnier, but Alice pronounces it Fernier.
Did he stand out right away? When did you first, you were in class together?
Yeah, he had charisma, except nobody would ever in a million years think that he would be a lead singer of a band. He was just this skinny little stick with a big nose, but he's always had a knack for making anything sound more interesting. He would enhance even. I used to say he can make opening a can of tuna fish sound interesting, but he wouldn't go and try to collect people to listen to him. He'd just always be in the classroom, and then next thing you know, he'd be surrounded by people because he'd be telling stories. And Glenn used to be, Glenn and I would be standing off to the side, and Glenn used to have this thing where he'd go, after Alice would be telling a story, Glenn would go, 25. That meant 25% enhancement on the story.
Well, Alice is a great storyteller. I just saw a recent interview with him, and you could tell he loves to tell stories, and he tells them as good as anybody.
Absolutely. And you can't, I've heard them all so many times, and you just never get tired of them.
Yeah.
I just spoke today. I spoke to our high school art teacher, Mrs. Sloan, who is about to become 100 years old.
Wow.
And I spoke to her for the first time since 1967. I told her, and she didn't know this, that Alice and I decided to start a band when we were in her art class, because the Beatles had just come out and we decided we wanted to start a band, and we wanted to incorporate ideas like Salvador Dali, surrealism, and the New York pop art scene into a band. And that happened in her classroom.
Wow. 100.
Yeah.
How about that, man? Yeah, all those memories just must come back to you, just especially when you got into the Rock Hall and when you guys are back in the studio working together, man. Those memories are just like right there in front of you.
Yeah. And us being together recently, it always floods back, but whenever we're all in the same room together, it's partly about old memories, but a lot of it is just a continuation. It's not like we have to fill in the time lost or anything ever. We just get in a room and it just continues.
It's awesome. I want to go back to Ezrin because he's such a big part of Alice Cooper history. He produced Love It
Absolutely.
to Death and Killer, Schools Out, Billion Dollar Babies. What is it that makes him such a great producer, specifically when working with your band?
He brought music theory into the picture. Uh, he 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 got what we were trying to do, where back then very few people did. We started a career with people saying you can't do that. We're like, oh yeah, watch us. But Bob Ezrin saw us at Max's Kansas City and New York City, and he saw the light. He loved the show. He thought this is going to be the next new thing. And at that time, we were just we had done two albums, but we still hadn't really mastered songwriting abilities. But by the time we met Bob, we had learned a lot about how to write songs, and we had also decided exactly what we wanted the Alice Cooper character to be. But before that, we knew what the character should be, but we didn't know how to write the songs to support that. So by the time Bob Ezrin came along, I had written Black Juju, and Neil had written Hallowed Be My Name, and Michael had written Ballad of Dwight Fry. So all of a sudden we had learned how to do these, write these songs that would be a platform for Alice to develop the character. But we still hadn't shed our inability to focus a song without having too many extraneous parts. So we would play a song for Bob Ezrin the first day we got together working with him in Pontiac, Michigan at our farm there. Uh, we would play him a song and he'd say, that's not a song. That's enough parts for 10 songs. Let's so I'm 18 was the first song we worked on. Bob remembers that differently, but whatever. When we worked on I'm 18, he said, we have to get rid of that big sprawling bluesy intro. And we're all like, but I like that. So Bob said, no, we're going to start with an instrumental chorus and go right into the song. And he whittled it down to an AM radio friendly arrangement, which is why we wanted him. We knew we needed somebody that could do that. And so that's one thing, his talent for helping shape what we were trying to do. But also, he had to be baptized by the fire of Glenn Buxton's sarcasm, because nobody walked into our sacred room. We all spent when people read what we say about each other in black and white, it just looks like we're being mean, vicious even. No, that's just our high school humor. We always put each other down, and
Yeah. Which is still there, right? I think you said you still to this day are just busting each other.
oh yeah. I mean, the other day in rehearsal, I made a mistake, and Alice said, "Oh, Dennis, you made another mistake." I said, "I only make them when I look at Neil." Stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Stuff like that. But Bob Ezrin came into the room. Glenn fired off a few of his witty remarks, and Bob actually made an attempt to come back. But that's, making an attempt to come back and outdo Glenn was all anybody could do. Most people would just, shrivel up and leave.
Right, right. You said Glenn also you couldn't just tell him what to do. You had to be real strategic about getting him to do something.
Glenn was a true rebel. You could not come off as an authoritative figure and not even one sentence. You had to, you did, you know, if Glenn was in the recording studio laying down a track, you wouldn't say, "Hey, Glenn, I think you should play a major scale there." No, you would say, "Glenn, would you like a blue light or a red light on you while you play this?" You know, that's
Yeah.
that's it. Like you drive me nervous. Glenn is like, "Hey, Den, what do you think I should play here?" You know, but I knew better than to say what notes I thought he should play. No, I said, "Easy, play nervous." Oh, okay. You know, that's how you dealt with Glenn.
Yeah. And Ezrin had that ability to work with different personalities.
Yeah, yeah, big time. Bob, you know, and also Bob knew when to let Neil and I explore to the point where we were even disruptive to the development of the arrangement of the song because we were looking for something, the ultimate groove for a part, and Bob knew to let us explore that, and then once we would lock in, then we would move forward. But he also knew, learning from the great Jack Richardson, who was his mentor, you know, that's who we actually went for because we wanted to get a producer that could make us sound like the Guess Who songs that jumped right out of the dashboard radio, you know, in the station wagon. But uh, Jack always prided himself on getting a hit song on a record under budget album. And so therefore Bob, you know, so he would let us debate what we all thought was the best part for a particular part of a song. Uh, because we were all very collaborative and we were all very passionate about what we wanted to do. It was never personal. It's always what you think is the best for this part of the song. But also Bob knew when to bring the hammer down and say, "Okay, we're losing time here. We're going to do it this way. Move forward." And we would all do that without nobody held a grudge ever.
And Bob, of course, he worked with Kiss as well. And Kiss, so influenced by Alice Cooper. And we just lost Ace Frehley. And Ace lived in Connecticut for a long time. Did you guys cross paths a lot? Did you know Ace well?
Yeah, you know, Neil and I went over to Ace's house decades ago, and he had just built this brand new recording studio, and but he didn't know how it worked. He didn't even know how to power it up. So we decided, okay, well, there's a drum kit there and there's a bass amp, so let's just jam. Neil, Ace, and I.
Oh,
And
man.
the studio had probably it seems like it was 20 feet tall glass bricks. And so we were jamming and really having a blast. You know, when you jam, especially like with Neil, it's there's a point where all of a sudden it's like you stop thinking and the song starts kind of creating itself. And you're sort of almost you're playing, but it's almost like you're an observer of what's happening.
Yeah,
The
coming to
creative
life.
gods are just laying some take over, you know. And so things were really flying along. And all of a sudden, that glass wall of bricks, glass bricks, flashed bright. And it seemed to be going with what we were playing. And there was a lightning storm outside, and this whole wall would light up. And,
Wow.
and it was quite a memorable thing. It was like we felt like we had gotten back from being abducted by aliens when we finished.
Yeah. Well, that would have been a cool project. Did that cross your mind? Like, hey, maybe we should record something with Ace. This would be cool.
Well, we wanted to record that, but he didn't know how to turn on the power to the studio.
Ace. Yeah. So you played that show in Phoenix recently. That was for Alice's fundraiser concert, which he puts on every year, the Christmas pudding concert. And he raises money for 3 local teen centers there. And last spring, you made a surprise appearance with Alice here in Connecticut at the Mohegan Sun Arena.
More recently, I sat in with Alice at the arena in Bridgeport. That was interesting too, because I told Alice, I said, instead of having me come out for Schools Out for the encore, how about if I just come out like on the 4th song of the set and play I'm 18, and then I'm gone and Chuck Garrick is back and you don't even acknowledge that I was ever there. You know, that's the kind of abstract ideas I like. Well, he decided that we could do that, but then I still had to come back for Schools Out. But so then I did that, and we had a blast. And then I knew Alice was going to be playing down in New Jersey uh, a few days later, and I had forgotten about that. But my wife and I, Cindy, was almost all the way to our friend's house that we were going to visit, like 3.5 hours from where we live in Connecticut. And all of a sudden I pass this thing, it says PNC Bank Arena. I go, wait a minute, Alice is there tonight. So I text him and he says, yeah, come on down.
That is
and,
awesome.
and so that was, I usually hang out in uh, Alice's band's dressing rooms just so we can make sure we got all of our parts straight. And then Nita has her own dressing room. So she didn't know I was there until I walked out on stage. And then she did like a classic double take, like, oh, what?
That's great. Are there plans for any shows with all of you guys together playing some stuff from the new album?
No, not that I know of, but there are occasions when I'm the last to know, all of a sudden uh, people will say, hey, Dan, I heard you're going to be doing this. And I go, oh, well, I better call Alice.
Yeah. This is news to me.
Alice keeps saying we're doing another album, but he seems to be the only one that knows about it.
We're talking with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Dennis Dunaway of the Alice Cooper Group. And by the way, a thank you to Chris Sutton, author Chris Sutton, who helped connect us. Chris is the author of Alice Cooper in the 1970s from Sonic Bond books. Get that book if you haven't. Chris is a great guy. Great guy. In July, you had announced a collection of exclusive autographed items from your collection. Tell us about this, and they are still available for fans. If they want, they can go to your website.
Yes, this gentleman, Steve Harkins, who has been in the music business for many years. Not only that, but he also worked for Macmillan Distributors, book distributors, and knew about my book and everything. So the Music Business Association had an event in Nashville. This was 2017, I think. And so Steve asked me if I wanted to come down because they had this great old hotel, and it was all musicians that had published books. And then there was a big jam going on and all kinds of great musicians involved. And so as it turned out, it was on the same night that Alice was, or the following night from when Alice was playing in Nashville. So then I got Steve to bring Neil Smith and Michael Bruce in the picture, and we ended up sitting in with Alice at his big concert at the arena there. And then the following night was a very intimate show with the original group, with Ryan Roxy on guitar, and we played at this book signing event, and that was a step toward getting the band back together, I believe, because we ended up touring with Alice later that year. But Steve Harkins has the Rock and Roll channel on Talk Shop Live, and it's kind of like if you're a celebrity or a musician, you can sell things there rather than being on Amazon or whatever, where you're competing with plumbers and everything else. Right. So there's the Dennis Dunaway, all the offerings that I have, like you can get a signed copy of my book with a special lost chapter included. You can get tour books from the Hollywood Bowl, these schools out, or the Killer Tour book that has an actual record on the back. Uh, Things like that. Patches, Billion Dollar Babies, Iron on Patches, the originals.
Yeah.
And all of these things are available on there. And then we keep adding things. We're about to add some more goodies, but
Oh, cool.
usually when we add the rare stuff, it goes immediately. It's like, it's great though, because Steve Harkins is such a great guy to deal with because he's very fair to musicians, and he's a real deal, rock and roll guy. So Talk Shop Live, Dennis Dunaway, rock and roll channel. It's easy to find.
I'm looking at it here. Yeah, these are things you found in your attic, going through your attic?
Well,
Or
most of them are in storage. Let's put it that way. But in order for me to go in that room, I need to tie a rope around my waist first.
yeah,
And
Indiana Jones.
yeah, right. So, but I found some new stuff that's very rare, and it's all authentic. It's real deal stuff. It's not replicas. If it is, I would tell people, of course. But then we try to price it at a reasonable price.
There are really good prices here. I mean, anything from $25 to, some maybe a little more higher up, but still, I mean, I'm looking at all the stuff here. I mean, you got t-shirts, 73 t-shirt. Yeah. Some great stuff on there. So yeah, people you could go to DennisDunaway.com and you'll see it there too. You can.
Absolutely. I'm writing a blog about this show that we just did a couple weeks ago in Phoenix.
Okay.
And that will be added to DennisDunaway.com, which my daughter and Steve Mayer helped me with the website. But I'm trying to add lots of things to keep it that interesting. But you can go there and find out Talk Shop Live. You can find out Blue Coop stuff and all of the things that I'm up to these days, which mostly right now it's writing songs and making demos of songs that I've started. Hundreds of songs I've started and haven't made a demo. Some of them are just in my head, So I want to at least make decent demos of all of these songs.
When do songs come to you? Is there a particular time of day, time of year, all of a sudden that it just starts to come out of you?
It's pretty much like all day long.
It's all the time.
My wife will say, "You're writing a song, aren't you?" We'll be in the supermarket, right? And she'll say, "You're writing a song, aren't you?" And I go, "Oh, how did you know?" And she said, "Because your head's bobbing up and down."
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it looks weird.
Yeah. So the melodies just come to you. You'll hear a melody in your head.
Yeah. Most songs start with just the idea, what do I want to say? But I mean, I'll be walking the dog and all of a sudden something will pop into my head, and then I'll come home and I'll lay it down as fast as I can while it's still fresh. And then I have a ton of those. And then I'll go back and pick the cream of the crop, and then I will finish them. But I rarely finish a song totally because I usually am thinking of Alice in mind. Usually if I write a verse, then I leave room for Alice to add his, 2 cents to it, and everybody else. So, but I like to get at least the idea of the verse and the enthusiasm and the groove and everything, and then the chorus. And that's basically a song. Everything else, people can add their own to it, so that it becomes a collaborative thing.
Hey guys, back to the show just a bit, but first I want to tell you about an exclusive deal for Booked on Rock viewers. Get 15% off any purchase at oldglory.com. Over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture. Merchandise featuring legendary music artists like Bob Marley, The Beatles, Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and many more. Go to oldglory.com and make sure to use the promo code BOOKEDONROCK. Also, find a link in this episode's description, or just go to bookedonrock.com and click on My Deals. This show focuses on rock and roll books, so can't go without asking about the book from 2015, Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs, which I picked up a copy on Kindle. I got a Kindle copy of it. Congratulations. It's a great book. It took me 10 years to finally get around to it, but I'm glad I did. It covers the story from your early days with the guys in high school to your rise, and you played what is considered the largest indoor concert ever, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, 150,000 people. Yeah, at that time. And that was in Sao Paulo in 1974. And you get into the breakup, the years following, the Hall of Fame induction. I mean, what a ride. But there's a show in 1972 at the Hollywood Bowl you devote a chapter to. Talk about that night. And that's the night you realize, like, yeah, we've made it, right? I mean, this is it.
Right. It was difficult all of a sudden for me to say, oh, we finally made it, because, we'd play to an arena crowd and go out back and there'd be people yelling insults at us, so, but then.
Well, because it was a controversial band, right? I mean,
well, we liked it that way, we didn't care if you liked us or hated us, as long as you were talking about us. So the Hollywood Bowl, though, I'm thinking, all right, there's no way you can play here without having made it. Elton John was there that night, and he was backstage raving about our outfits, which my wife, Neil Smith's sister, Cindy, designs and makes and everything. But Elton John, all he could talk about is how great we dressed. And another thing, so we had a camel, Cassius the camel, and what's his name, the DJ from down.
Oh, it was a Wolfman Jack, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wolfman Jack is going to come out on the camel and introduce the show, right? Well, the camel pooped on stage. And so backstage after the show, Shep Gordon is there, and the union guys are there telling him he's got to pay for a guy to shovel that up, right? And Shep Gordon, to give you an idea of his New York City street savvy, approach.
The legendary manager, by the way.
Yeah, and Joe Greenberg. Greenberg, who's a good friend to this day. So Shep is telling them, we don't want it shoveled up. This is a theatrical show, and it's a cool night, and we want it to steam in the stage lights. And that, meanwhile, Elton John's over here raving about the costumes.
And what were their panties being dropped from?
Oh yeah, we dropped paper panties, and right. So the helicopter flew over the Hollywood Bowl, and he wasn't supposed to do that, but we paid him, and we even bailed him out of jail.
Oh my God!
So we're looking at the Hollywood papers the next day to see what they wrote about us, right? And the main story was the surrounding neighborhoods of the Hollywood Bowl, very affluent homes, all had I guess the blades from the helicopter or the wind blew the panties into their neighborhood, and they were all hanging in their trees.
Oh my God.
So people came out of their houses. There's panties everywhere.
Mortified by what they're seeing.
And that was a bigger story than our show.
Oh man, but that's the thing though, the publicity that you would get from doing things like that, man. It's just you can't manufacture something like that, man. That stuff
but it was manufactured. We calculated stuff like that all the way back when Alice and I were in high school. We had our band, the Earwigs, that were supposed to be from Cesspool, England, and we would make up stories about the Earwigs, and because we were both in journalism and on the school newspaper, we would always weasel in all of these stories about the Earwigs. So, like the Rolling Stones, early on, they finally made national news because they took a leak on some building in England, right? So we looked at it like, okay, that's how you got to jump the shark. you can get into a rock and roll rag, any day, but to make it into the masses, you had to have a story that was good. Everybody does it these days, but back then, so even the time that Cindy made clear plastic pants for the band. And so this was, I think, 1968 in Hollywood for, it was St. Patrick's Day. And so we were going to wear clear plastic pants. And then our managers were going to call the LAPD and say, get down here and arrest this band,
Yeah.
Well, we had two problems with that. First of all, as soon as we started playing, the pants steamed up and you couldn't see anything. And the other problem was right up the street, just a couple miles, were all of the strip clubs on Sunset Boulevard. So who cared about the band?
Yeah, yeah. Well, was that Frank Zappa was part of the story? It was the story in Canada with the chickens.
No, Frank wasn't there at
But
that.
wasn't he the one that was telling?
With,
I think he told Alice, though. He's like, Alice, don't correct it, man. This is perfect. It's going to make headlines because
right, yeah,
it was a misunderstanding about.
Well, okay, there's different versions of that story, but Alice, but the truth is, Alice really did think the chicken would just fly. You know, he's not a farm guy. I knew. I knew, but the stories got pretty exaggerated, I think, because I have seen footage from somebody that was right near where the chicken landed in the audience. And, it wasn't ripped apart by a bunch of paraplegics in the front row and all kinds of wild stories that came around. But it certainly put us on the map, and we didn't really know it because at that time we were putting so many crazy things into the show that we figured some of them are going to flop, but if anything, but at least people are going to walk around talking about what they saw, and everybody's going to have a different interpretation. And we also like to change it up. So we thought, okay, we want somebody to go and tell their friends, oh, you got to see this band because they did this, this, and this. And when their friends get there, we do that, that, and that. Totally different, right? So now after the Toronto show, it also was exaggerated because we would take the pillows from the Holiday Inn and a fire extinguisher, and Alice would rip the pillow open and Michael would spray the feathers to Kingdom Come. I mean, they'd hang in the air for an hour till all of them settled. And so Alice tosses a chicken and then there's feathers everywhere. So that helped the illusion that this poor chicken had perished. But then everywhere we went, we didn't even get it for a while. I think the world caught on to that it was a reputation before we did, because we go to a show, I think it was in Boston, and these kids had rubber chickens. And they're going, chicken, chicken, chicken. We're going, what are they talking about,
Yeah, the showmanship, the shock value, and then you combine that with these songs that are just bona fide now classics, like I'm 18. That's a song, and you're right about how that becomes the most requested song in the history of CKLW, which is in Windsor, Ontario. And that station helped to establish the band in the Detroit, Windsor market. It was released in, I think, on this month in 1970. And you say they played it every fifth song. It was the heaviest rotation outside of the Beatles. And it's a song that really stood out to Bob Ezrin when he saw you guys play live. He thought it was I'm Edgy.
Right.
But talk about how that song came together.
I'm Edgy isn't bad.
It would have worked.
Yeah, it would have worked. But the reason it was I'm 18 is because this song came from a jam that Michael had, like the chords. And when we would do a sound check at a, tiny club or whatever, we would just jam on that. And then we would, each of us would come up to the microphone and do a funny verse. We'd just make stuff up, but it was just to warm up. And then at one point, the band was at Warner Brothers, and we were talking to one of the A&R guys, and we saw this chart on the wall. And we're saying, so wait a minute, who's the what age is the biggest record buying age? And he said, hands down, 18 years old, because most of them are still living at home. They don't have to pay rent and they've got money in their pockets. Uh, so we said, okay, well, we can relate to that because we all met when we were in high school. Uh, and so the idea of making it about an 18-year-old started coming together. So now when we would do a sound check, we would come up with lyrics that we thought would fit that concept. Now, of course, Alice polished it and really brought it home. And Rosalie Trombley worked at CKLW. They called her the girl with the golden ear. I think there was even songs written about her.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Bob Seger, I believe, wrote it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Rosalie Trombley is the one that started playing it. Now, I hadn't seen her for years, decades after that, the whole thing happened, because CKLW was right across the river from Detroit. But since they were in Canada, they didn't have the restrictions on the power of their transmitter. So they could blast the entire Midwest of America and Canada, like Wolfman Jack did out of Mexico when he started. But so now, years later, I'm in a bar in a hotel late at night in Phoenix, Arizona. It was an event. The town of Phoenix was giving an award to Alice and his wife for community service. But now it's late at night and everything's closed and I'm hungry and I'm in the bar trying to figure out what I can get to eat. And this guy comes over and says, "Are you Dennis Dunaway?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "My mom is Rosalie Trombley." I said, "What?" And he said, "She's over here. She wants to know if you want to have a drink." Sure. So Rosalie has these giant martinis. So I have one of those. And I said, "Okay, I finally get to talk to you." And I said, "So how did this come about? What made you think that I'm 18 was a hit?" She said, "The lyrics." She said, "Before it even got to the chorus, I knew it was a hit." And then she said she started playing it, and about day 3, all of the other disc jockeys came into her booth while she was on the air and said, "Wait, we don't think you should be playing this because this band is the Chicken Killers and all of that." and she said the timing could not have been more perfect. Every phone was ringing off the hook with requests for I'm 18. And when they saw that, they said, "Oh, okay, go ahead and play it." I told Rosalie that was us calling.
Well, I mean, it connected with teenagers, just like School's Out, right? From 72, another timeless classic. And it connects with that age group. But again, it's a timeless classic and you can listen to it now and it's still it holds up so well. And you say in the book that this is the first time you all felt like, yeah, this is a single, and the music you had worked out, but you wanted to perfect the lyrics and you hit a snag on that final line of verse 2.
Well, School's Out was written for the same reason, because we didn't really have a hit as big as 18 off of the Killer album. We had Under My Wheels, which did pretty good. Be My Lover did pretty good, but it didn't reach that level. And we thought, wait a minute, we didn't target that same age group. So that's why we wrote School's Out. Was one of those songs that almost felt like a gift from the creative gods. It kind of just felt, we all went to high school in the same town during the same years. So it was a no-brainer for us. But so this is the song that we all felt, okay, this is a hit. And Bob Ezrin got us all together in a room, and he had a legal pad and a pencil, said, "Okay, let's lock in these lyrics because this is a hit." And so the whole band went through line for line and we got everything. But you're right. There was one line that we just kept, the more we tried, the dumber it got, kind of a thing. And so Bob said, "Okay, we're bogging down. Let's continue and finish the song and come back to this." And when we came back to it, were still bogged down. And finally I said, hey, wait a minute. We're the kids at the back of the class. We can't even think of a word that rhymes. And, Neil's going, yeah, well, no, whatever. And then the light bulb goes on over everybody's head. Yeah, that's it.
And Glenn's riff, as you say, it's great enough to march through time with the best rock riffs ever created. And he had such a unique style, and so much so that nobody has been able to replicate that unique scream. Talk about Glenn as a guitarist.
Well, that's his personality. He was a true rebel, and that riff is his fiery rebellion. I mean, we were thinking, okay, we want school's out. When that school bell rings, the final time when now you're out of school, we felt, okay, we want it to be fiery, rebellious, mostly because of Glenn and because he had that guitar riff. And we want it to be, Neil and I decided we want it to be militant almost. We're getting out of school. So Neil came up with like the bolero kind of a beat for the choruses, and I supported that with a very percussive sound. And then when we got to the No More Pencils, No More Books, we wanted that section to sound like little kids on the playground. So all of a sudden the bass goes up to bing, da ding, da ding, da ding. So everything just fell into place on that song like that. And, I used to say, if I know what a hit single is, 90% of what's on the radio wouldn't be there. But, but that one I did, it just felt right. And it's in the Grammy Hall of Fame now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is. It's a classic. It's it's one of those two. You get around to September each year, and you'll hear the song and commercials, and it's just always going to be there.
The other thing about that is, it appeals to you no matter what age you are. If you've been in school, you can relate to it. And therefore, we will do these things like autograph conventions and all of that. And it's not just the parents bringing their kids to meet us and the kids looking like they'd rather be somewhere else. But because of school's out, there'll be the kids bringing their parents to meet us.
Yes. That's awesome.
And teachers. Like I told you, I talked to our high school teacher today, and I told her, as far as school's out, that no more teachers thing, disregard that. We love you, Mrs. Sloan.
And the success of the School's Out album meant that you were selling out arenas now. And that was during the time that you and the band came up with the idea for the $1 Billion Babies album. Talk about the mansion that you recorded that album in. You had mics set up everywhere, including the bathrooms.
That's right. It had a big solarium it had very few plants in it. It was marble floors with all glass. So it made a great natural echo chamber that most recording studios would die for. We had, microphones in the bathroom. You had to be careful if you went in there to make sure the mics were shut off out in the truck that was sitting in the driveway with the producers and stuff, which there were times when the mics were not shut off. And but
that was here in Connecticut, right? Greenwich, Connecticut?
Greenwich, Connecticut, and that house had belonged to Warner Baxter from 42nd Street, the actor.
Yep.
Yeah, his ex-wife lived in that house. In fact, I have right here on my wall a portrait of Warner Baxter that was in that house when we moved in.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, old Greenwich. It was, I mean, the ballroom was big enough to put the entire $1 Billion Baby stage erected in that ballroom, and still have the ceiling was like painted like the Sistine Chapel, sort of a mural way up there. It had a fireplace that you could park a Volkswagen Beetle in easily. And at one end of the room, there was what looked like giant windows with no glass in the panes. And then a wall that was about 4 or 5 feet tall. And that's so the orchestra could be sitting in there and you could hear the music through the windows, but the people wouldn't have to look at the band, the the musicians, or the musicians couldn't see who was there. They couldn't tell the tales, I guess. But yeah, it was grand. Therefore, our environment, Pretty's for You was glitzy like Hollywood, and uh, uh, Love It to Death was gritty like Detroit, and now we lived in this very affluent house. And so the theme, Billion Dollar Babies, was a natural.
And that song, Glenn brought that in as a ballad. He and guitarist Rock and Reggie Vincent wrote the music, and then you said, you know what, this needs some muscle, some dynamite underneath it. There's a
Yeah,
story behind that one.
Rock and Reggie is a great songwriter. His songs sound a lot like Roy Orbison, beautiful ballads. And so we had decided at rehearsal, okay, we we want to call the album Billion Dollar Babies, and then we decided, well, let's also have a title song. School's Out album had School's Out, but usually we didn't have a title song. But we decided we want to have a title song. So then the next morning, Glenn and Rock and Reggie came down, and we kept playing this beautiful ballad over and over. And finally, I said, if this is going to be the title song, we got to light some dynamite under it, And I jumped up off my stool, and everybody's looking at me like, what do you got? And I didn't have anything. So, but I did know I wanted it to be aggressive. So I went da 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 da
Oh,
da 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 da. And so then I started developing, okay, Michael, what's the next chord? So then I made the bass line go down there, and then had it follow through the chords. And then at that point, Bob Ezrin said, okay, Dennis, you show that bass part to the guitar players, and Allison and I are going to go, and Neil are going to go play pool for a while, and then we'll come back. And when they came back, then Neil came up with the drum part. Alice always says we wrote it around Neil's drum part, but Neil's amazing signature drum part came after the bass part. Uh, but another song, Generation Landslide, that was written around Neil's drum part.
it's a great song.
Thanks. We wrote that in the Canary Islands.
Really. What is that feeling like? Can you even describe when a song comes together like that, when you all come together and create something like that?
Well, that's what keeps you coming back. That's like hitting the hole in one, and okay, you might end up in the pond or the woods sometimes, but that when music works, it's very satisfying as a musician.
Yeah, man, it's just a natural high,
It is. It's a natural thing, and also, so now this is in the creation of a song. A band has to learn how to write a song, how to work together collaboratively. That's what we did, which that worked well for us, rather than somebody coming in with a song and we all learn the parts. That happens sometimes, but music is ever interesting because it comes at all different ways. You can look at a newspaper, or you can be walking down the street and see something happen, and all of a sudden, click, there it goes, and you're off and running. But you also have to learn your craft, because you can't rely on those inspired moments. There are songwriters that will only write when they're inspired, so they'll wait and have dry spells. And then there are songwriters that say, write a song every day, and sometimes when you're not inspired, that will inspire it.
Mm.
But you have to learn your craft to be able to write a good song without the inspiration being the guiding light. But then the ones that are the inspiration is what guides you. That's the hole in one that keeps you coming back.
Do you start thinking like Ezrin when all the things that he did early on, you start thinking about like, too much here, let's cut this down? You start to think about that. You learn from him, right?
Absolutely. Bob Ezrin was the teacher, but as opposed to some classes, where you're not interested, Bob Ezrin is the teacher that knows what you want to learn. And we were like sponges. I mean, we soaked it all in, and we apply it to this day. Absolutely. We worked with some of the greatest people, Jack Douglas. Jack Richardson oversaw Love It to Death and Killer. All of these great people, that's the other thing. Working with people that you know what their specialty is uh, allows you to focus more on what your specialty is. And that's why I say sometimes I write a song, but I don't totally finish it because I know somebody else is going to be able to do that to my liking. And it's also the sum is greater than the all of the parts, you know. I have an idea and I have an idea for a song, and then Neil might say, "Wait a minute, Dan, why don't you change the beat to be like this or whatever, and all of a sudden, bingo. Yeah, that's it.
The final chapter of the book covers the 2011 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Since then, there have been the occasional reunions, and now we have this amazing new album that came out in July with the original band. I was going to ask if you thought about adding chapters for an updated edition, but I know that your wife, Cindy, may really be the answer to that question because she's working on something that might be considered like a sequel to your book.
Cindy kept daily diaries. Not only that, but she has all of the letters that her and Neil wrote home to their mother, telling her what was going on every step of the way.
And for those who may not know, she's been with the band from
since
pretty much
1967, since before we did Pretty's for You.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Cindy was there when we were writing the songs for Pretty's for You. She got a job and helped feed us and designed our look and was basically our therapist.
Yeah.
whatever the band needed. It was a team and we all worked together. We had the roadies, we had the management, we had everything was all for this vision that we shared, and we were driven to achieve it. And there was no roadblock that we never would throw in the towel ever. Even when the band took a roll, van full of band members, full of all of our equipment, even a washing machine in the back. And we rolled 3 times across the San Bernardino freeway coming into LA in the 9 o'clock in the morning rush hour. And our equipment was destroyed. And we didn't have money to buy more equipment. So, but did we throw in the towel? No, we figured it out. And, that's like Frank Zappa used to say, if you stay together long enough, you'll make it.
And Cindy kept a daily diary of the events. So,
yeah.
Okay. So this,
she could use some of it for blackmail material on me.
Yeah, right. So what's the prediction of when's it coming out, or what are the plans?
I don't know. I am letting her do her own thing, and if she wants any 2 cents from me, then she'll ask and I'll give it to her. But I will say, from what little I have read of it, there's a lot of surprises. There's things that we had totally forgotten about, her included, where she looks at her diary and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute. Oh, wow, I forgot all about that. And not only that, but it's from a completely different perspective, because she wasn't in the rehearsal room necessarily, but she could see this overall picture of what was developing. And when she would do the costumes, we would decide, okay, we're thinking we should maybe do this kind of a concept. Then she would sit down with each band member and then talk about, well, what would you like this to be? And then she would have suggestions. And then it would always be a deadline of like tomorrow morning. We need 5 outfits by tomorrow morning.
No pressure.
Yeah. And also we don't have any money for material or anything. And she would miraculously create all of this stuff. And so I'm looking forward to it coming out because it is a whole different view of everything that happened.
Well, lots to look forward to. And people can find out the latest news at DennisDunaway.com, the official website. You're also on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
So people can find you there too. You keep people up to date on what's happening.
On X as well, but mostly Facebook. I have 2 pages on Facebook, but it's me. So if somebody sends me a message there, I don't have somebody else operating it and pretending they're me.
Dennis, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. And again, thanks to Chris Sutton for setting this up. And it was great talking to you, man. So many great stories. And you're welcome to come back on, Cindy, when she gets that book out. You got a place to plug it right here.
Definitely. You might want to talk to Mike Amp Boy Allen too. He was our very first roadie, and he has a book out that's great.
I'd love to have him.
Yeah, Living and Touring with Alice Cooper and other stories, and it's very, very entertaining and humorous. But
I'd love to have
the very early days.
Yeah. Oh, we can work on that off the air. We can
I'll put you in touch with him. But yeah, as soon as Cindy's book is ready, we'll be talking to you, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis.
All right. Bye-bye.